All right, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to episode 143 of the On Air Advocate. Where at the On Air Advocate, we look to provide education, support, and empowerment for all of those with different abilities, mental and medical illnesses, and their caregivers. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Tammy Flynn, and I am the host and producer of the On Air Advocate, and I am super excited if you are here joining us this afternoon or whether you're catching this on the replay. And thank you for your patience. As always, if you think any of this content could be relevant for anyone in your circle or your network, please hit the share button and share the love with others. Well, as we are in our wrap-up week of our back to school and transition interview series, I am so excited to bring kind of this mini training to you guys by Lori Albers. Lori Albers is with the Children's and Youth with Special Health Care Needs. She is the project manager and you have a really long title, the project manager of Family Engagement and Family Advisory Committee and the E-Advisory Team. So I'm excited to have you here today, Lori, and we have a great topic to go on. But before we start that, I'd like you to just give the folks a little bit more about your titles, your background, and what brings you here today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Tammy, for having me back. With my background in having a child with special health care needs, I am lucky enough to be working for the Children and Youth with Special Health Care Needs program. It is a program for the state of Wisconsin in the Southeast Regional Center that happens to be located in Children's Hospital. We're actually located on the first floor of Children's Hospital inside the Family Resource Center. And what I do there is I do a lot of work around family engagement, which is a great way of saying we really like our families to be involved in the work that we do, whether that means that they are telling us about their patient experience or helping us improve the healthcare system from within. So what this training is actually brought to you by ParenttoParent of Wisconsin. It's a partner organization that we work with, and ParenttoParent connects families on a one-on-one match, either through a diagnosis or a patient journey.
Okay.
And we strengthen our families both by providing support, but also taking families that have been on that journey a little bit longer and training them to become supportive listeners and providing peer support for either families that are newly diagnosed or maybe have a new turn in their journey that they may not know how to navigate.
And I know that you had shared with me, ParenttoParent is in like 34 states, right?
That's correct. It's a national, it's nationwide in 34 states, and then the other states that don't have more defined parent-to-parent have other ways of matching parents, and there is a national listserv for that.
Okay, so all the folks that are viewing today, this great organization can be found or accessed in some way in your state for your
Correct.
type of help. And the training that you did today, is that something that is kind of a collaboration between the parent-to-parent as well as the children and youth with special health care needs? Like you guys collaborate on different trainings, or is this something strictly brought to you by parent-to-parent?
This one is strictly brought to you by Parent-to-Parent. As you can see, I wear multiple hats at Children's Hospital. And this was actually developed for our families with kiddos that had congenital heart defects, but it really functions for any family that is on a journey, whether it's children or adults that have a medical health condition.
Okay.
And it's really about how do we as parents or family members communicate in a supportive role and really be that support for a family that's going through a journey.
Great. And so we are going to do kind of the mini presentation of this.
Right. Micro version.
The mini version, because the regular version was like a few hours, wasn't it? Or an hour and a half or something like that.
Right.
Presentation. So we are going to get going now that I can see you. I know you can see me, but I couldn't see anybody. And all my friends at Instagram, they'll be able to vouch for me because they couldn't see you guys either. So if we want to hit the slides and we can get rolling.
Excellent. All right. And share. Does it come up? Yeah. Yay.
There it is. Awesome. Awesome.
So like I mentioned, Parent of Wisconsin is part of the Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs program. It's funded by Wisconsin Children and Youth with Special Healthcare Needs program, which is a division of public health, the Department of Health Services, through the funds of the Maternal Child Health Title V Services Block Grant. And then Parent to Parent is also has the partner with Down Syndrome Association of Wisconsin and Children's Hospital of Wisconsin as well. I already alluded to what is Parent to Parent. It is an intentional connection with a trained support parent who's already learned the language, knows the resources, and has really been there, which is a really great opportunity. I mean, when we think of supporting families in their journey, it's really overwhelming and a lot of times very isolating. So to be able to match a parent who's either gotten a new diagnosis or has had a change in their journey to someone who's already been there and can provide that anticipatory guidance of what's coming next, or maybe allow a family to think about what questions they should be asking a provider, or what questions they might need to be asking their school system even. That's really valuable support that a provider such as a doctor or a nurse really can't help a parent with.
Right. And, you know, something that I just want to speak to is obviously, you know, Lori, from being a part of our on-air advocate community as well, that there are so many parents that have so much information and have gone the journey for many, many years and sometimes decades. So, you know, after this segment is over, I'd encourage you guys to reach out to Parent. And if you are able to help support another parent, you know, and find out about how you get involved, take their training and whatnot, I think there are just some amazing people, you know, within our community that could provide such great support for other parents.
Yes, well, thank you. And we do trainings around the state of Wisconsin, so it's not just in one area. So trainings do happen throughout the state to make sure that our families can really get connected. All right, as I alluded to, there's a parent-to-parent concept. I'm just going to go through this slide since I kind of already touched on most of what's there. And I'm going to get into why we really think that parent-to-parent is a great opportunity for families, as well as how can it really benefit our families. And in order to do that, I just wanted to touch on chronic stress. As a family who has two kids actually that now have special needs, I know that stress is, it kind of takes over your life, especially when you get this journey and you new diagnosis and new doctors and new appointments and all the things that go with caring for somebody that has some type of a health challenge. And chronic stress is really that emotional pressure that a person goes through. It changes the endocrine system, increases the cortisol in the body, causes changes in the brain, and affects memory function. I don't know about you or our viewers out there, but I can say for myself that when I take a new journey, there have been many in our 10-year journey here, you start to forget what's going on, or I know I've gone to the wrong doctor for the wrong appointment, but you know, all of those things are signs of chronic stress.
Right.
And stress is really just a biological response to a situation. So if we figure out how to reduce or eliminate that stress in our families that we work with, it's a huge benefit. And I'll get into those benefits in just a minute. So on top of chronic stress, our families also, a lot of them go through chronic sorrow. Mm-hmm. Chronic sorrow is the presence of reoccurring intense feelings of grief in the life of parents and caregivers of children who have special needs or chronic health conditions. And what that sorrow is a lot of times the kids don't reach the same milestones as other children. Or in a case of a family maybe going through having a loved one get diagnosed with dementia. You know, that person might seem fine one day and then the next day they don't remember somebody, and that's really heartbreaking to the individual that's caring for that person and the family members surrounding them. So those are just a few examples of chronic sorrow. I know for a number of families that I work with, a lot of small things can trigger them in thinking, oh my gosh, this is so sad, or it's so heartbreaking, because they see that their children don't necessarily get to do and participate in the activities of their peers.
And you know, Lori, and maybe as your kiddos are getting a little older, you're finding there's these huge periods where this I think the sorrow and the grieving comes back like full storm. And you know, I remember for myself that first grieving was in the beginning, you know, when my son was born, that first year. And then I always tell people it took about 7 years for me to get my head straight, you know, in that process. But now that this is the first year ever, I don't have any children going back to school. My son, you know, is going to be 22 this year. And I feel like the grieving is even might even supersede what it was when he was born, because now you have gone over 2 decades, you're doing this, and you realize, as we've talked about, that a lot of those opportunities when they were younger and under that age, those dissipate. You get less of a support system, and you've been stressed for so long, you know, and trying to bring quality of life and happiness and self-worth. And so I definitely agree with all of that. Definitely.
Well, and unfortunately, it seems to be a part of the journey. And like you said, there are moments of you have that sorrow, and then you kind of hit a plateau and you feel really good, and then it just kind of gets triggered again, and then you hit that moment again, and then you move forward. And we see that a lot, especially for kiddos who have numerous surgeries or numerous diagnoses as they're going through their journey. It's really a cyclical grieving process, because you start to grieve that, like you mentioned, and a lot of families will go through the total grieving process of denial, guilt, fear, anger, depression, starting to cope, and then that new thing happens again, and then you go through them all those feelings and emotions all over again.
Yes, definitely. That cycle.
So there are different grieving states. I won't go through all of them, but when we really start thinking about grief, that the stress, the chronic sorrow, and then even for a lot of our families that we work with too, grief. And the grieving process is different for everyone, but the way that we can really support those families is by listening.
Right. Because I think, as you know very well, Lori, a lot of the things don't have an answer. They don't have a fix.
Correct.
And when we come to things that are out of our control, and especially when it comes to not only their health, but then the funding and support that needs to be behind that. And there are some things that, you know, we can advocate and we can fight for, but unfortunately, it may take 30 years to change. You know, you need to keep doing it, but we don't get that instant relief.
Right. And those feelings don't dissipate just because that tragedy or that surgery or that moment has ended. We're still living with it. It's a trauma that stays with us. So the benefits of having peer support, like an organization of parent to parent, there's a number. There's informational support, because families can share experiences and information. There's emotional support. I know for myself, going through my journey, I felt really isolated, and I thought, gee, no one could possibly have had the same experience I had. But to find somebody that could encourage me and reinforce the fact that I was okay, and I was a good mom doing what I felt was in the best interest of my child, that was great. I know for myself, it made me feel much better about where we were and what I could do. And that eventually became advocacy for me. For other parents, it might give them an opportunity to kind of look at life or look at their family. I know some families that was eye-opening, and they were able to do more self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you are in that moment, you kind of forget about all of those other things.
Right. And, Lori, actually, we met, for the folks that are listening, at the beginning kind of your journey.
Right.
At the very beginning of that. And we connected as two mothers that had, our, children with different abilities. And so, that peer support was there, right away. It was that instant connection, like, oh, we get each other. We get
exactly. And that's one of the great things about providing peer support. You don't have to sit there and tell your whole journey, because somebody automatically gets it. Yeah. They've already been there. And with that peer support, there's so many outcomes that are just improved for the family that gets support. They improve their health-related quality of life, health behaviors. Like I mentioned, some families are able to suddenly take care of themselves better because they have that support. And when a family is supported, that parent or parents that get support, that winds up becoming intergenerational, because not only are they able to support, do they feel better themselves, but then they're able to take care of their family better. And those kiddos generally tend to become advocates in healthcare, and do more for their community because they feel supported.
Great.
And when we think about support and how that really benefits families, it becomes physiological. So I don't know if any of our viewers are familiar with what telomeres are. Probably not. I know it was a word that I was like, I have no idea.
Well, if you are and you're listening to this live, please drop below, because we want to know that you know about it.
Right, exactly.
I have not heard that word.
Okay. Well, what a telomere is, it's a little cap on the end of our DNA. So if you think of it like the plastic cap on a shoestring, if we took that plastic cap off, the shoestring would unravel. And it's very similar to what happens with our DNA. So when we have a lot of stress, we talk about the chronic stress and the chronic sorrow, right? That all weighs heavily on our bodies. And it, as we mentioned, that changes our endocrine system and it changes our memory, right? All of those things make our telomeres on our little shoelaces, if you will, shrink down. But when we start to provide peer support, and those families feel supported and encouraged and empowered, those effects are reversed. So that's when we start having those physiological changes. And it's very interesting research. I won't go into all of the details, but to know that the work that gets done and the support that is provided isn't just for today. It is a long-term time coming, and it really helps families in the long term throughout their journey. So as we talk about communicating in a supportive role, now we've looked at all of these things that make it very demanding on a person to provide care. So to start to reverse those effects, the first thing we need to do is listen. And like you, Tammy, I have 2 children who like to talk a lot. So I remind them a lot that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak. And I know myself, I was not taught to listen very well. I was always waiting for an opportunity to jump into the conversation. But I'm really working very diligently, and I'm trying to teach my kids too as well, that it's really important to listen to what people say so we understand the whole picture and the whole story.
And that kind of piggybacks to yesterday morning segment about
right.
the blackout, about taking away screen time, and how that really rejuvenates that spirit of listening and interacting and communication within a family and all of that.
Right. So there are 5 levels of listening, and I'll just briefly go through them. There's non-listening, which is like if your kiddo gets off the school bus and they're talking a mile a minute and you haven't had a time to just sit and pause and listen, that's your non-listening. You know that they're there, you know that they're talking, but you might not really be comprehending what they're saying. There's the telling my story level of listening. So you're listening sort of, but with the intent to interrupt and to either one up or tell the story. There's listening with a level of judgment. And as much as I know a lot of people are like, I don't have any judgments, we all bring judgments to the table at some point in our lives. So we might be trying to criticize or say, I think you should do it this way, or whatever that might be, instead of really listening to the whole story and getting all the details. And listening to apply, and then listening to understand. And when we listen to understand, we are really being fully present in the moment. We are free of distraction, and we are really taking in all the words that are being said so we can ask good questions and be supportive and show empathy.
Everyone should put those on their fridge. It's a reminder.
Okay. And this is just a great quote from Thomas Gordon. When a person feels that he's truly accepted by another as he is, then he is freed to move from there and to begin to think about how he wants to change, how he wants to grow, how he can become different, how he might become more of what he is capable of being. It really validates the speaker of the story. And like I mentioned before, there's no judgment. So it really allows someone to feel that they are in a safe space and they can talk about their diagnosis or their journey.
Because that's not always an easy space for many.
No, it's not. And when I think about active listening, even though we kind of talked about the levels of listening, when we really want to be active in listening to somebody and being present with them in their moment while they're talking, these are just 7 quick things to be thinking about. So like I said, being present, being attentive, asking open-ended questions. When we ask yes or no questions, it tends to shorten what a person is going to say and kind of cuts them off. By asking open-ended questions like, tell me more about this, or I'm sure that was very difficult. What did you learn from it? Or something where they can expound on their story. That goes to asking probing questions as well. Request clarification. So you may be talking to someone and they may have used a few words that you're not familiar with. You can say, can you explain that to me? Mm-hmm. That really shows that you're listening to what they're saying and that you're taking interest in the topic. Paraphrasing is where you would be talking to somebody and then say, thank you for sharing that. Let me make sure I understood that correctly and, rephrase that. And that shows that you're being attentive. And they may say, oh, no, you got that all wrong. This is what really happened in the surgery. Or it may be, yeah, that's exactly what I meant, or that's exactly how I felt.
And I think Lori, number 4 and 5 are really, really important in that, medical realm for, parents to feel empowered. That when they go in, that no question is a silly question. And the only way that you learn verbiage and you learn all of those things is by asking for clarification and doing that, rephrasing of things to say, did I understand that correctly? Is this what that really meant? And I think sometimes, there are some barriers to that, fear of what someone is going to, think of you and all of that. And so I think 4 and 5, especially for, medical family is real important to make sure you're getting the clear answers for that.
Yes. Thank you so much for adding that, Tammy.
Number 6.
And 6, being attuned to and reflecting feelings. I think that's also really important as well, because that really shows empathy. If we kind of, in storytelling, and as you know, I'm also a storyteller here at Children's, In storytelling, emotion is really what helps drive impact and change. As people tell stories and talk about experiences, and as a support parent, being able to key into those feelings that a family may be going through and acknowledging them, that really provides validation for that family. 7 is summarizing, or very similar to paraphrasing. And those are really the key skills for active listening. So when we're talking about paraphrasing and acknowledging, there are some simple ways to acknowledge and indicate listening to whoever it is you may be working with. And this goes for the medical community as well as family and friends. But giving prompts such as, "Oh, I see," or "Can you explain?" Echoing that, paraphrasing like I mentioned, giving people a chance to elaborate or asking those probing questions. And one of the other ones that I really like is wandering curiosity, because there's a lot of times for our families that we work with that they may not know what the outcome is going to be. So by asking clarifying questions like, "I wonder what would happen if," or "Could you tell me more about," or "I'm really wondering what that was like," it allows them to elaborate. And then clarifying once again. So as we obviously have talked through listening is really super helpful in doing that acknowledgement and validation. But when we listen, we also need to listen with our whole body and really, like I mentioned, being present. But we're listening with our heart as well as our ears. And one of the other key ways to be supportive when you are communicating with someone is to really focus on how that person is feeling and keep that as part of the conversation instead of jumping in with your own personal thoughts and anecdotes, unless there is a lot of mutual reciprocity. So there's just some examples of open-ended questions. I'll just, that'll be in the PowerPoint that can be up on your site, just so people can think about questions they could be asking if they are communicating in a supportive role. What I like about this is that there aren't any why questions. It's more of probing questions of what could happen or where people would like to begin and start a conversation, instead of really making it feel very directive and putting people on the spot and making them uncomfortable. When we communicate with families, there are a lot of common mistakes. And I know I've done it myself, and then I've thought to myself, gee, I wouldn't have liked that if someone said that to me. But when you're on this journey, sometimes you think that somebody else's problem or issue might not be as critical, but the person that you're working with, it is critical to them, and that's their perspective, and keeping that in mind is really key and important. So just some of the common mistakes are what I would consider dismissing the problem, like it's not a big deal. I mean, I remember when my son was having one of his brain surgeries and somebody was like, "It's not a big deal, it's just a brain surgery." And I'm like, okay. To me, that was a really big deal. And maybe to somebody else it wasn't, but it really was painful that someone thought that my pain at that moment wasn't important or necessary, or I should just minimize it. Ignoring feelings, playing the expert. When someone is offering support, you really need to let the support parent decide what's important to them in providing the support, unless you're really the provider that's got the medical background. As the parent, you may have had a similar journey, you may have had some similar experiences, and you can say, this is what happened to me.
Right.
But you don't want to be the expert because you don't know their journey.
Right.
And then the last mistake is giving false hope or raising expectations. And that's a hard one, because I think a lot of people generally try to be very positive. Well, tomorrow will be a better day. But we know that in this journey, tomorrow may not be a better day. It may be the hardest day that somebody is facing. And we just really want to just reiterate the fact that we know they're going through a hard moment or time, and that we appreciate what they're doing, but we don't want to minimize, once again, what they're going through. So, being that I work for a hospital, and hospitals are full of acronyms, there's an acronym for everything. So one of them that I use, especially when I'm supporting families on the phone in the role that I have, is I remember to think before I speak, and think is it true? So if you can provide facts and actually cite them and use them, that's great. So it's not just an opinion. Is it helpful? Is it encouraging? Is it inspiring? Is it something that can make a person feel better without minimizing what they're going through? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And being kind is really so critical in the work that we do when we're supporting families. Like I said, we take out that judgment. We are really there to provide kind words instead of doing something that could create more damage.
And Lori, when we're speaking to this and, communicating in a supportive role, just so if like viewers are coming in maybe halfway through this, we're speaking to this as a point of obviously parent to parent being another support to another parent, but so many of these things
right.
also pertain to normal life. So you can extract that with your relationships with your family, your friends, and everyone else. But this presentation specifically was for parents supporting other parents that are on the journey.
Correct. Okay. And for our parents who really want to support other parents, they actually take a 6-hour training in order to work on these skills, role play these skills, and being able to ask questions so they can really have a good understanding of how everything plays out when they are supporting another family.
And like we had said, that's something that as an opportunity in 34 different states, parent to parent is.
Correct.
For those to take those classes.
So I'm just going to close with a quote that children live happier, healthier, safer, and more productive lives when their parents are strengthened, educated, and supported. I really think that is true for everyone, whether they're children or adults. Everybody really can live a more productive life when families are strengthened.
And Lori, what would you say? Parent to Parent is an amazing organization, there for others and that support. Are there other agencies or things just along your journey even, outside of work, inside of work, that you have found that have been extremely supportive and helpful for you?
I found Parent to Parent pretty early on my journey and was able to get connected to support parents for a multitude of different things, which then allowed me to go and become a support parent. And then eventually I grew in my advocacy and eventually wound up doing this as a career. That's not necessarily everybody's trajectory, but I know that there are a number of different online support groups. I have not really worked with very many. I've worked with a couple of different organizations who may have support within their organization,
Right.
but specific to my child's diagnosis.
Okay. And there are, I mean, we've spoke about that so much on this show, is now compared to 20 years ago, there
Right.
are so many more things, you know, Facebook specific groups that
Right.
just target one condition, you know, one area. But, you know, Parent to Parent, a great organization to get involved in. And I know that the children and youth with special health care needs, is that was just a Wisconsin thing, or are there other ones in other states, but they're just named a little different?
Right. So that is a federal program. Each state handles it differently.
Okay.
Here in Wisconsin, we have 5 regional centers that work with families birth to 21 and provide information and referral services to those families with a child with special health care need. And a special health care need is defined, could be anything from ADHD or asthma to really complex needs.
Okay. And so, there is something like this possibly.
There's something like that in every state.
Okay, just named a little bit different.
Correct.
Okay. Would there be anything that you'd kind of scope out to tell other folks that are in other states, like something to possibly look under, or maybe looking under the same name you guys have, and maybe someone will have something similar?
I would think that if they did a search for children or youth with special health care needs, or put in children and special health care needs, that they would be able to find an agency or organization within their state.
Okay, perfect. And we can drop some of those resources below. We definitely, below this live, will drop the Parent to Parent resource and connection, the children with youth and special health care needs that is here in Wisconsin. And then, you know, I know that actively a lot of times people seek out other resources and they can't find it in their state. So you shoot an email over and you say, hey, I'm in Virginia, or I'm in,
Right.
you know, here. Do you know of any good organizations? And a lot of time, awesome organizations in other states can be like, hey, probably head over here.
Right, exactly. And one other resource I was going to mention is the Schools of Life Conference, which is a conference that is held in Wisconsin, and it is for families of children and youth with special health care needs. It's a great way for families to get in front of a lot of information and a lot of services, but it also allows families to make that connection one-on-one with another family that's had a similar.
Okay. Well, Lori, we're going to drop all that. We can drop that information below as well, and when that conference is coming up this year, so people can stay on top of that. And so with that, are you able to minimize our screen real quick? I hope I don't get lost again.
Nope, I think we're good. Yay!
All right. Well, I just want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day today to share this information with you. I know that you'll drop the links below. People have questions, they definitely can direct them towards you as well. And I know you're always there to help.
Of course.
And with that, I hope everybody has a fabulous afternoon. Thank you for tuning in. We will be live tomorrow morning at 4 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if anyone is awake, come join us. With that, you can find out all the information about the On Air Advocate at onairadvocate.com, or you can head up to the top of this Facebook page, hit the blue button, and that will let you into our private community. So with that, thank you again, Lori. I appreciate it so much.
You're
thank
welcome.
you, Parent to Parent, for putting this on, you know, putting it all together. Great information. You guys have a fabulous day. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Tammy.
Bye-bye.